take a while. It will always take a while to make anything that's good. Although there's always that person that everybody either respects or can't stand that can really make good work fast. And it's like a person that you give them a guitar and they start playing it and they've never even had lessons. So what can you do about talent? Some people have got it, and sometimes they waste that talent. I've had many students that had tremendous drawing skills and just no patience or persistence, and a lack of desire to want to improve themselves. And so I hope somewhere they're out there making artwork. But I've also had many students who, after their experiences in middle school and high school art, chose to pursue art in college. Maybe not as an art major, but took art classes in college. I've been making art since I was a child, and I have been teaching it for decades. But I still take lessons myself. I have a painting instructor, and she's tough on me, and she makes me do my best work. And if I don't, she knows that I know it, and I have to face her with my work, and I have deadlines too, just like I impose on you all. So it's making art is work, and that's why they call it artwork. Otherwise it'd just be something you do for fun. But it should be something that is fun to do. So people who take a sport seriously work really hard at that sport, and it seems easy for them. They don't have to be forced to do it. I am lucky to have a job where I get to make art and teach people how to make art, and that each day when I'm able to get out of bed, nobody has to make me go to work. Nobody has to make me be enthusiastic about my job. So I'm happy and I'm fortunate, but it's also been a result of a lot of hard work, taking art in high school and middle school, and making art projects in high school and middle school, and then going to college and pursuing art as a higher education subject. Has all been a long journey to be able to sit here with you now and simply color in black and yellow and all these other colors. But it has taught me some things, and I've met some people along the way that impressed me, and some of them that disappointed me simply because of the waste of their talent and the gifts that they were given. So if that applies to you, then I think you should apply yourself and work harder. If it doesn't apply to you, then that wasn't meant for you, I suppose. But I've been disappointed in many of the artworks I've made simply because I ran out of time, had to force it to work, and it just never comes out well that way. And so about half of the stuff that you make as an artist is going to be good, and then about half of that that's good is stuff you hang on your own wall or put out there for somebody to buy if they wanted it. So you really want to do your best work. And so we're closing in on our third letter L. Now see, doing the same letter over and over would bore most kids and most students. However, it doesn't bore me. I'm not easily bored. But if you're an individual that thinks you might be easily bored and then stop doing your very best work because you're simply repeating the same shapes over and over, well then you should go one square at a time, or beat one row at a time, and that will break up that tedious aspect of doing it the way that I'm doing it right now. Although I am going to here in just a moment move on to the next letter, and I'm pretty happy about the progress, and we'll call that, if we get 4 done in one class session, we'll call that a good day. And that's usually as much as any 6th grader that I've been exposed to over the years, and that I have had a chance to watch work can do more than about 4 squares in one class session and do them well. Okay, let's move on to our next letter, and over here it's going to be the letter P. Well, when we look at our color chart, it just so happens that it looks like the letter P is right here. It's a blue outer square with a white square in the middle. So that means we're going to have to find our royal blue there, or in the Crayola pencils, of course, just blue, as it's called. And it looks like that's going to need to be sharpened. So, you know, you spend some of your time making sure your implements and your materials are ready to use when you're ready to use them. And in this case, we're ready to get going. So, you got to erase first. Now, sometimes you might be able to get away with not erasing if a dark color were to go over it. My advice, don't do it that way. My advice is erase it as you go. Alright, the letter P, blue on the outside, white on the inside. We'll come back to the white at the end of the project. But for now, we're going to get this outer portion done, and that will be a good production for one day. And then when we get back together again, which will be in the next episode of this video, we will continue on and try to get 4 or 5 maybe done in one day. Some of the letters are easier than others. They simply don't require the very tight contact of you know, colors against each other, like this blue and this black. That's always dangerous to do it that way. And if you get too rushed about your work, that's when you start making those kinds of production mistakes that really stand out and hit you in the face. So, you know, sometimes you just got to hold your breath and tuck that color right up next to the next one and take just small strike marks with the pencil. There you go, see. But see, you gotta, it's risky if you get in a hurry. So, blue is looking pretty good here for us. And work on some other stuff. There we go. And so if you've got comments or you would like to, you know, add to the conversation about what we're doing here today, then simply leave them in the comments below on the YouTube video, or feel free to post them on our Google Classroom. We've been getting quite a bit of activity on that Google Classroom. Emails back and forth, students sending in the answers to quiz questions. Pretty creative too, a lot of them. So keep that information coming. If you have ideas or recommendations, you know, I'm open-minded. This is a new environment for a lot of us. I've always wanted to make an instructional video. However, it seems it's more complicated than I had anticipated. But we're making it work, ladies and gentlemen, and that's what we got to do under the circumstances. So, whether you're a student who's just making up this project simply because you were out of class, or you missed a day of instruction when I was getting ready to show you how it was done, well, then you'll be back with this in class soon, I'm hoping. If, on the other hand, you're part of the e-learning group here, well, we're making better progress than maybe we had in the past. We don't have disruptions or minimal. It's just straight up production almost the whole time. Now I'm trying to tear my paper, so I gotta practice what I preach right there. Okay. Alright. Progress is being made. So I'm listening to some old school music while I work. I don't know what everybody else likes to listen to, but this is an old album from when I was a child called Jerry Rafferty, City to City. And it's got some great music on it. Some of it is deep poetry. while you're coloring and making artwork, sometimes music can keep you a lot of company, and the poetry in it speaks to you many times. Yeah. I remember my middle school art teacher. Her name was Louise Leibold. She was a wonderful person, but she was tough on us. She was also a track coach, and she told me I had a lot of talent, but I didn't work very hard. And so I was always really working hard to try to get her approval, because she told it like it was. And so when I was in 9th grade, about halfway through the year, Miss Leibold got sick with leukemia. And that was a long time ago. We're talking about the 70s. And there weren't any treatments to help her. And about midway through the year, Miss Leibold died of leukemia. She was a well-loved teacher, and we were all very sad and heartbroken by this. And we got a long-term substitute, and her name was Miss Gorawara. And she did her very best to fill in for Ms. Leibold, but we were all so angry and hurt that we treated that woman very poorly. And so I guess if there's anything that, reflecting back on that, makes me contemplate, it's the fact that, you know, we should have been nicer to the person that tried to help us. And then, strangely, Miss Gorawara became the art teacher the next year. But I had already moved on to the high school, and so I didn't have her as an art teacher after that. But we should have been nicer to her. And Ms. Leibold was well loved, and she would have been disappointed in us. So she really wasn't just an art teacher. She was a teacher of people. She was a life teacher. And many times when I'm working with students, I reflect on how Louise Leibold would have done things. She was a patient lady, but she didn't put up with misbehavior, that's for sure. And I received my very first detention in middle school from her for an incident in the hallway involving a permanent marker and another student. But that's another story. But I thought it was funny. Alright, we're almost done for today. Alright, well, making artwork, it can be very reflective sometimes. You learn something about yourself. You remember something about yourself when you're sitting around coloring and just thinking. But I think that looks pretty good for one day's work, ladies and gentlemen. And pretty much where we left off the other day, and we're about the same place now, and I'm going to make a black mark there to indicate one period's worth of work. And I'll be outlining this later anyway, but I just want to know where that ends at, and that would be that line right there. So, we'll clean up for now, and we'll get back together again tomorrow and continue on with this for another 40 minutes or so, and within a few days it should be completely done. Well, and we're back for another hopefully 40 minutes worth of coloring on our design project, which of course says all people are created equal. When we left off last time, we had filled in all of these letters L and of course finished here at the letter P. I put the black line there indicating 1 day's progress. So we're going to continue doing what we were doing today and keep on coloring it. That's how it's done. It takes several days to get through this project, just the coloring portion of it. So our next letter is the letter E, and if we look at our chart, it's pretty easy to see that the letter E on here, since it's not G, L, I, or Z, the top half of it is blue and the bottom half of it is red. Now, if we do this in a physical classroom, you would have done this on this larger worksheet, and so it would be much easier for you to see. So if you're making up the project, you also would be doing it on this as well. But for the e-learning students, we're referencing this, although it's a good idea to have the worksheet. So blue on top, red on the bottom. And it's, we'll go ahead and, we've got to erase first just to make sure that we don't have our layout work showing through our art project. And so we're going to just kind of dust that off there carefully. Now things are looking pretty good. So it's blue on top, red on the bottom. Now clean working habits would make us think about this for a while. I wanted to go ahead with the red, but then that means I'd have to reach up there with the blue and I might smudge my work. So I'm going to hold off on the red for now. I'll get to use it here some more, and I'm going to start with the blue on top. It seems like we've been using a lot of blue and black on this project, and I think you would be correct about that. So I'm shielding my work there so I don't smudge it with my hand if it's dirty. Now I'm going to get up right next to this black line. You really didn't need a black line there. That was just for me to show where we made our progress to on this project as far as coloring goes. 1 day's progress of coloring. Now we're up at the top of the paper there, so it's always a good idea to give yourself a little bit of a margin there to color it in so that when you go back you don't tear the paper. And we're probably going to use quite a bit of the blue colored pencil before this is all done. It might disappear, might have to find another one sometimes. Depends on how good you are at sharpening the pencil. If you break the pencil tip off all the time, it won't last. So I've been fortunate so far with a new box of pencils that has not been abused. I've been able to get through all of the blues that I'm coloring on right now, and I've only had to sharpen the blue colored pencil a few times. Now I also roll it in my fingers a lot, like I've said to you before. So I'll repeat myself a great deal of time, and that's part of being an instructor, is that when you teach people things, sometimes everybody just doesn't catch it the first time you say it. And then you stumble across moments where a person says, hey, what about this? And you say, well, like I said before. Okay? So rolling the pencil in your hand makes it last longer when you're trying to color. Now also, trying to break down that strike mark pattern so that we don't have a pattern. So it's very kind of smoothly colored in, and making sure that we're aiming for those specks of white paper that are showing through periodically. And it looks like I may have to sharpen my pen. Well, I've got a good point on it right there. Maybe I can get a little more mileage out of it. But you don't want it to get too short. If you start scratching the picture with the wooden portion of the pencil, you really need to just stop and resharpen your pencil. Now, I like to have a handheld pencil sharpener that I keep at my work area, and that makes it much more effective and efficient when I'm working, so I don't have to get up and always go to the pencil sharpener in the room. I've also noticed as an art teacher that the pencil sharpeners that you normally would use to sharpen pencils with just don't really work very well on colored pencils, and after a short period of time the colored pencil, because of the waxy material that's in it, it really messes up the pencil sharpener. So a rotary pencil sharpener is really meant to be used with pencils that have graphite, or what most people would refer to as pencil lead, and they don't really work real good for colored pencils. So I use a handheld pencil sharpener such as this. I also have them at school in the art room in small cups at every seat. There's one for every two people, one at every table. And this keeps the students at their seats working, and it doesn't mess up the pencil sharpener. Plus, the pencil sharpener makes a lot of noise. And if we are trying to get our work done and people are constantly up and walking around the room to get to the pencil sharpener, well, that's not helpful. And then when the pencil sharpener starts messing up your pencils, that is also not good either. So the small handheld pencil sharpener seems to be the solution to that. Now, many times though, those sharpeners, because they get used by many people, they will get dull. And if that happens, and we are in an actual physical classroom, meaning the art room at Warner, well then, you know, come up and see me at the desk. I've got more pencil sharpeners, or we can perhaps change the blade of the pencil sharpener out so that you have a sharper blade to work with, and it will give you a much better working point on your colored pencils and your regular pencils as well, and your drawing pencils. So that's my lesson on colored pencil sharpening there for today. I'm going back and dressing up some of my thin spots there, but this is looking pretty opaque in one pass right there. That's pretty good color. I'm gonna go with it. So that means now I can, for the first time in this project at least, I get to use the red, and it says red right on it. So make sure that when you're doing a project such as this, that you use the same red over and over again, whatever that red would be. I've noticed that Crayola red is slightly different than other brands of red colored pencils. So if you're using a Liquimark or a Sanford or a Prismacolor or a Classroom Select, these are all different brands of colored pencils. You simply just have to make sure, or Berol, B-E-R-O-L, that's another brand of colored pencil as well. So if you're using a different brand of colored pencil, you simply got to just make sure that it gets as close to Crayola red here as possible, and then you've got to keep using that same colored pencil to match. So you don't really want to have more than one type of red in a project like this. So when you're e-learning, well, you have to be a little bit more flexible about the materials. However, if you were in art class, a physical art class at Warner, then you would be using Crayola pencils, and the reds are all the same in Crayola pencils. That's what they're supposed to be, at least. There's no guarantees. So the letter E, see, it goes together pretty quickly there. It doesn't require a great deal of heavy control, tight control, just really following along the lines. Now, some people say, Mr. Mathis, why is it important to stand the lines? Well, at least in this type of artwork, it's important. And also, we're trying to build eye-hand coordination in the 6th grade, so that you put the pencil exactly where the pencil needs to go, and the mark needs to go, so that what you want to happen, and what we want to happen, is the ability to stay inside the lines if we desire to do it. And in this case, that's part of the class and part of the project. So we're building eye-hand coordination. We're trying to have intention, meaning that when we start to do something, we carry it out. So art is the difference between the way that people make art and the way that some animals you may have seen on videos make art, is that there is no intention for the animal to make art. It doesn't sit back and ask itself, well, what am I trying to communicate here? In a lot of ways, young children also, people are fascinated by the artwork they make, but it has no intention to it. They don't have the ability to reason through it and say, hey, I'm going to stay inside the lines, or hey, I'm going to draw this straight line straight, instead of just getting whatever happens. So that's the difference between what we are doing in a class and what people do for enrichment activities, or what, you know, a talented elephant can do. Because I've seen videos of elephants holding a paintbrush and putting paint on a surface, and it's pretty impressive. I know a lot of people that would struggle to do that. So it's maybe they are making art. But you would have to get inside the mind of that creature that's holding that paintbrush, or that little child, and find their artistic intention. So we are having an artistic intention, and our intention is to complete a message that says something. We're making an artwork that has a message in it. And for those that are interested enough to take the time to figure out what that message is, then they will have to look at it, so it has visual interest as well. And furthermore, it's an exercise in building up the strength of your hands for later projects we will be doing. The coloring for the car project that we'll do eventually requires the same level of control and the same level of pressure in order to get the opacity that's important to have when you make artwork. So it's all part of a greater process, simply because it's a class. A lot of people are surprised when they come to 6th grade art because, well, we have notes and we have lectures and we have quizzes and we grade work habits, and you know, we grade the notes. I let you use the notes on quizzes. I think that's pretty fair if you take the notes down. So here we are. I just do a lot of discussing about class, what there is to know about 6th grade art. That looks fantastic. All right. Now that brings us to the letter O. So see, we've been able to finish one letter in just a few minutes time there. So if we look at our project here, we're going to the letter O, and the letter O is really quite simple as well. It's simply split right here, as we can see. I'll move that up a little bit. And it's red on the top and it's yellow on the bottom. So the good news is we get to keep using red. The bad news is we have to sharpen this red colored pencil. But the good news, we get the color with it right now. So let's stay on it. Let's say move some things out of the way and cover some of this up. So make sure it is red on the top, yellow on the bottom. However, I do have to erase my letter out. Now, I've seen many students get in a rush when they're doing the coloring, and they spend time doing a good job on the coloring, and then they get the colors reversed, and we have to either chop the artwork apart or they have to do it again. Sometimes it's not easily fixed. But in this case, I'm going to apply what I've learned, which is to trim it in around the edges a little bit, and that will help me color faster, strangely. Doesn't seem like these things would make that big of a difference, but they really, really do. Nobody ever believes that you have to think about coloring, but you do if you're going to make artwork. Okay, I'm going to hold this down, get that corner good so I don't have to tear it up when I try to color in on the edges. And then on over here, we're just going to continue up and down that edge. Now we're trying not to form a pattern if we can avoid it here. Sometimes that's hard to do. But in this case, it seems to be not so hard to do. All right. There it is. Okay, well, we're using up our colored pencils. So we're on our second letter. If we can get through 4, maybe 5 letters today, or in this session, I guess I'll call it, that would be tremendous, tremendous progress. Alright. Now we kind of trimmed in around all that, we can just start going back and filling in the mess in the middle. Yeah, there seems to be something messing with me there. It's texture coming through of some sort. I think it's a good idea personally in my workspace here at my home. I've got the camera, of course, set up, and I've got a solid piece of wood underneath this, and it makes for a much quicker work if you're coloring, or drawing for that matter, against a hard surface. You get that opacity happens a lot faster. You can keep the pressure on the pencil tip is really a lot better too. You could do this project with crayons if you needed to. It simply is a little messier and the crayons smear a great deal, but we've had years when our supply order didn't come in at school, and we've had to resort to using crayons. So if you have to do that, that's also good too. And as long as you're going over the work, you know, and it's coming out opaque, well then that's okay. I really resist people using markers. They're really destructive to your artwork. The materials that are in the inks, although they may look good immediately up front, it's very difficult to keep them from fading, and they just really don't make good permanent artwork. And you know, we're in the business of wanting to make good permanent artwork, stuff that you can hang on your wall for many, many years, stuff you might keep with you your whole life. I have pieces of artwork from when I was a middle schooler and a child, and I periodically reflect on those and find them in my memorabilia boxes and my old folders upstairs in the attic when I'm going through things. And I remember when I was in college, I thought that I really could draw, and I look at the work that I've made since college and I wonder if I really knew how to draw even then. But I was learning, and you have to have confidence. If you're going to be in a field like the arts, you have to have confidence. You can't not believe you won't succeed. If you believe you won't succeed, you probably won't. But we're succeeding on this project, so we're going to go.